Something about Abe. Abe weren't just a teacher. He had aspirations to making a difference, a real difference. You see, he believed we weren't treating animals right. He said all God's creatures had rights not to feel pain. But we desensitized ourselves to the pain we inflicted on animals by killing them and eating them and making them live on factory farms in little cages that didn't give them no room to roam, like the song says, on the range. We was able to do this, treat the animals so mean, by dehumanizing them, which didn't rightly make a lot of sense to me, since wouldn't they have to be human first before you dehumanize them? But then I figured I was only a hick kid from Hicksville, South Carolina. What in the hell did I know? Sorry, I just can't help myself. I've got a dirty mouth. One thing got him steamed under his caterpillar hat: greedy agribusiness corporate farmers. Whenever he said that, I always pictured a fat businessman driving a tractor. I pointed out to him, ain't nobody'd wear a suit to drive a tractor in. It'd get too hot. But then he explained it's not the facts, it's the idea. He's trying to communicate the truth of the idea, he'd explain, and sometimes you gotta lie to tell the truth. All the time we was hanging out together, we couldn't rightly go out to dinner. He'd get apoplexy thinking about eating meat, so we'd stay at his place and eat tofu burgers, which weren't as disgusting as you'd think if you smothered them with barbecue sauce. We couldn't have sugar because the exploitation of the sugarcane workers, and honey was out on account of the theft of the honey for them poor bees who was storing up their honey for their own families, only to come back and find their life savings stolen from them by the same people who could have sensitively harvested the honey instead. That was a big word for him. Sensitive, Being responsible bee caretakers instead of bee slaveholders. The one thing that made him madder than a cat you done tossed in a pool was people who let their animals get pregnant. Though I couldn't quite figure out what the pet companion. No, that's not right. It's animal companion. Like in companion of the animal. But that don't sound right. I'm not talking about the animal, but the human. So wouldn't it be the human companion to the animal? I never could get that right. Anyway, what this person that had himself a pet was supposed to do was to discourage his old tomcat from wanting to get together with the girl cats, especially seeing how Abe didn't approve of the old-fashioned fixin'. So that was a violation of the animal's rights to sexual self-expression. So, what are you supposed to do? You gonna lecture your cat on birth control? Give your tomcat condoms before he goes out for a night on the town? Be careful now, Fluffy. Safe sex. It made me laugh to think that safe sex for a cat was not hunkering down the middle of the road and getting run over before you finished your business. But I would think of something like that when Abe had his mind on all sorts of high-minded stuff. I guess that's what I loved about him. He was so passionate about his ethics. Nothing justifies putting one life ahead of another, he said. Even human life weren't more special than the simplest grub bug. He caught a firefly once and held it up to me. This is as precious to God, he says, as you or me or the tiniest baby or the prettiest little girl. It's all the same. We're all God's creatures. Figuratively speaking, of course. He always used to do that, apologize, for mentioning God. One time he cut his hand breaking into a pound to free all the dogs that was set to be executed, and he let out a huge "God damn!" Then he apologized, not for swearing like any normal, well-brought-up fellow would have, but for referring to a worn-out metaphor of karmic justice. That's his own words, but I'm on the grass, as they say. He wrote what he called progressive children's books, spreading a New Age gospel of compassion for animal rights, but he didn't even call them animals. That's a slur like calling someone the N-word. Sorry if I offended you, but it's the only way I could think to explain how he thought. He called them non-sentient beings. And that's a mouthful, I know. Don't exactly roll off the tongue, neither. You can't rightly shout out, "That non-sentient being is fixing to do his business on the carpet. Please put our non-human companion outside." Before you get all those words chewed and spit out, the stupid dog would have already made its mess. But in a way, he had a point. Think of all the negative associations we have with the word animal. Whenever somebody does something that we don't like, we call them acting like an animal. They even made a movie about a bunch of crazy college boys, and they called it Animal House, all of which gives animals a bad name. On the other hand, my old dog used to lick his butt, and no college boy's ever done that, I reckon, so I guess they're about all even. Abe would show me the books he was working on. We'd go out and sit on his front porch afterwards, and we was naked as blue jays, rocking back and forth on his porch swing. Quite a sight for the neighbors to see. If he'd had any kind of neighbors, that is. His place is out in the country, kind of. The bugs would be buzzing around, the moths circling the porch light, and the beetles smacking themselves into the screen door, the fireflies doing their fairy dance, like my grandma used to call it, under the drooping willow tree out in the yard, and the cicadas a-strumming their bows like they was all getting set to play at Carnegie Hall. He brought tears to my eyes, telling me the sad story of Chicken Little, the little chicken in an industrial chicken processing plant who tried to warn all the other chickens about the day of doom. So poor little Chicken Little ran around warning all the others, Henny Penny, Clucky Lucky, Roaster Rooster, but nobody would listen to him. They all said kind Farmer Jones wouldn't do nothing like that. He comes and feeds us, and Mrs. Jones takes care of our little ones in the little chickadee daycare, so we can sit and cluck around all day. Till finally Chicken Little, he showed the other chicken people, that's what Abe called them, a movie about the Holocaust. That's where the Nazis killed all the Jews, and Chicken Little warned that if they didn't do nothing, pretty soon they'd end up in the ovens just like them poor Jews, and all the other chicken people got to thinking that if people could do that to their own kind, they sure as hell, could do it to them. And then a chicken sympathizer leaked a used Kentucky Fried Chicken box full of chicken bones from the big White House that Farmer Jones and Mrs. Farmer Jones lived in, and all the chickens gathered round and looked at it, and even the supporters of the White House administration had to admit that was the smoking barbecue pit they was looking for. Abe didn't like to say smoking gun on account of it might give kids a wrong idea, about guns and all I mean, and not about smoking, though come to think of it, that too. So all the chicken people raised a chicken rebellion and drove the evil Farmer Jones off the farm by throwing chicken poop on them, and I gotta tell you, that part was real funny. Then they raised a class action lawsuit and won that farm and made it into a chicken collective, though I kind of lost interest in that part of the story. It dragged on, sort of. There was pictures and everything. It was real affecting to me, but when I told Abe, it's a good story, but you can't fight old McDonald's farm. People wanted their Big Macs or their chicken McNuggets or whatever it is. You should have seen him. He stood up and he was all mad and his face was all twisted and he was talking so loud that I thought he'd wake the neighbors even though they was a half-mile down the road. And it would have been real impressive, him standing there making a speech about moral rights and not being prejudiced against people just because they got feathers or 4 legs, and how 200 years ago people wanted their slaves in this part of the country. But they've learned since then. People have to learn that others have rights, just like people of different skin color have rights, so do people of a different feather. Except you got to remember, he was naked as a skinned cat, so all the time he was shouting and getting red in the face and waving his arms with his little tummy sticking out and his dingle-dangle flapping in the air like one of them train crossing warning signs. He looked so ridiculous, bless his heart, I had to laugh, or nothing else I could do but laugh at him and squeeze him and love him. And that I did.